Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. This is Avish Nandra. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. I shall be your host for today's session. And the theme of today's discussion is all about how to deliver faster and more efficient mineral reserve sensitivity analyses using the application from Cirrus Mining Innovation. It's my honor to be your host for today's discussion, and we sincerely hope that it proves to be insightful and stimulating to you. Now, before we get started, just some brief housekeeping notes. When you join the webinar, your audio should have connected automatically through your computer. However, if you're having difficulty with that, you can also hear the discussion via your telephone using one of the telephone numbers listed within the invitation and email. You will also receive a copy of the presentation slides that we're using today within 24 hours after the webinar. But today would be grateful if you have any questions, please pose those during the session, and I'll be collecting those, and we'll address as many of those questions during the question and answer section right at the end of the webinar. We expect the session to last approximately 35 to 40 minutes or so. Okay, so I think before we get going, what I'd like to do is really set some of the context behind the discussion, and also before I introduce today's panelists. As we all know, the mining industry has gone through quite a long period of uncertainty. And if you read the key objectives in any typical company annual report, there is usually a statement about creating value by growing the company's major assets, which are the mineral resources and ore reserves. And this they're trying to do through a combination of innovation in both the geological modeling and also their mine planning applications. Now, however, with that sort of approach, the software that many companies are using today is typically based on very old technology. And this is usually many decades old, is often quite slow, inflexible to use, and as we all know, quite often sits within the domain of very highly trained expert users or external consultants. So it's this inability to conduct mineral reserve sensitivity analyses in a timely fashion that's really one of the key elements holding the mining industry back. So what today's geologists, mining engineers, their financiers and executives need are modern tools that mitigate risks and exploit opportunities within their mineral assets. So what you'll see today represents nothing short of a revolution for the mining industry, with the first cloud-based, dynamic, collaborative, scalable and easy to use application that you can use on your laptop, your tablet or your smartphone from anywhere in the world. This application will dramatically change the way you work for the better. So let me introduce today's panelists. I've got David Collins, who sits in London. He represents Cirrus Mining Innovation. David, could you say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Avish. It's a pleasure to join you today, and thanks so much for hosting. This should be an exciting and fruitful opportunity to speak to everyone.
It's great to have you with us. Also, I'd like to introduce everybody to Professor Giorgio Tutomi. He's the head of the Center for Responsible Mining at the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Giorgio, are you on the line?
Yes. Hi, Avish. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Look forward to contribute to the seminar.
It's great. Glad that you made it for today's discussion. So with not much more than that, what I'd like to do is hand over to David Collins, who's going to discuss some of the recent updates to the Cirrus application. So having said that, David, can I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, of course, Avish. Thank you so much for that introduction. So yeah, just to start with a couple of updates from Cirrus, really. Firstly, one exciting thing to mention is that our software engineers have been able to make some really dramatic speed improvements when it comes to file upload, processing, and sensitivity analysis calculations. So previously, for a sort of typical project, so taking data from uploading the model to creating resource and economic reports, was taking about 6 minutes. That same workflow is now only taking about 54 seconds in Cirrus. So quite an exciting improvement in terms of performance that we've added recently. We're actually going to show you how quickly the sensitivity analysis is happening now in the live demo today. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be very exciting. The second thing to update you on is that we're very happy to announce that we've been in the process of developing an iOS and Android application for Cirrus. We've had approval from Apple and Google to add them to their stores, so that will be happening very soon. If you're interested in using an early edition of these applications, please contact us and we can provide you with some more information. The next thing that we wanted to mention was security. Security is incredibly important to us, and that's why we decided to use Microsoft's cloud technology, which is incredibly well respected for data security. Any data you upload to Cirrus is already heavily encrypted and backed up, which means no risk of data loss. Having said that, some of our early users have asked for an extra level of security when it comes to login credentials. So what we've done recently is we've added two-factor authentication, and I'll very quickly show you that in the demo today. And last thing, we've been working on our reporting. So we've added some really intelligent and smart reports for our sensitivity analysis, which we're going to show you today. And we've also just beefed them up a bit, added some cool new tools for exporting and printing reports as well.
David, that's great. Thank you so much for providing the update. Now, can I bring Giorgio in here at this point? Giorgio, I know you've been involved with Cirrus for some time. Could you give us an explanation as to why you became involved with Cirrus and why you think this application is so important for the mining industry in general?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Avesh. Well, first of all, I teach mining to young mining engineers. And, you know, one of the key messages is that what we do is to understand, measure, and manage the risks behind a mining enterprise. There are many of them. We know from recent events that is a very tough industry. You know, it's exposed to a number of risks. So what we do in teaching mining engineering, in addition to teaching how to use technology, how to, you know, understand the engineering challenges, we also talk quite a lot about risk measurement, risk analysis, and risk management. Okay, and the same is true for my my professional participation in the industry. I act as a qualified person in mining projects, and as a qualified person, I have to state my evaluation analysis of the risks behind each project. So that is why I got involved with Cirrus from the beginning, because it is an innovative tool. We have nothing similar. We never had anything similar before, and we still don't have anything similar in any shape or form to assist us with our job to understand, measure, analyze, and manage all the risks behind a mining project. So that is the key issue for me. And what we see here is a recent study carried out at a quarry near an urban area, okay, in Brazil. And the picture is quite dramatic because it's a natural example that, you know, how difficult it could be to operate a mine in, you know, like working on the production side, and, you know, all the requirements of a mining operation within a very close proximity of urban areas. So whatever we do, we have to be extremely careful. A little mistake may have dramatic results, so we have to be very careful. So this is an example in this slide of what we are faced as mining people on a regular basis. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, I want to show something which is another, you know, actual example with real numbers of how tough mining is. This is like an example from Brazil, right? But it applies anywhere else in the world. You know, we start having great opportunities, beautiful properties, lots of potential, but only a small percentage of that may become mines, okay? So if you see at the actual numbers in Brazil, only 1.6% of the exploration permit applications became mining permits. So it's very tough. Mining is very tough. Mining is about risk management. So what I see as a potential for Cirrus is to help mining people to take decisions that help them improve this final number. Try to get better results, being more efficient in how we measure risks and how we manage those risks behind the mining operation.
Right, thank you, Giorgio. That's a very interesting perspective on that, and it sounds like a very exciting time to be involved with Cirrus. Now, without further ado, I think let's actually have a look at the application. So I'm going to hand back to David. David, could you start by explaining how the Cirrus interface works?
Yep, of course, Avesh. Yeah, thank you, Giorgio, for that explanation. That was fantastic. So I realize that some people watching today may not have seen Cirrus before. So let's start with a very quick overview of how it works. The first thing to mention is that Cirrus is 100% web-based, which means no complicated installations or hardware requirements. You simply just log in. So this is our website if you haven't seen it before, and you can log into the application from here. The reason we designed it this way in terms of being web-based is that we realized that people that work in mining, they're not always sat at their desk, and they need something that they can access from any device. So when they're at the airport or taking a train or in a car. I'll just start by introducing the Cirrus interface very quickly. So at the top, we have what we call the menu bar. And the menu bar is where you can access all the projects that you're currently working on. And on the right-hand side here, this is where you manage your account information. So how we mentioned that we have two-factor authentication now, you can access that from within the manage your account settings, and this is what it looks like. So what you have to do is download an application on your phone, and then you're able to hook that up with Cirrus so you can have that added security for your login. If I go back to the main page here, the next thing I'd like to introduce you to is the toolbar. And the toolbar runs across the middle of the page here, and this is really where you access all the different functionality of Cirrus. And at the bottom here, we have what we call the workspace area. And the workspace is really cool. It will dynamically change depending on which Cirrus tool that you're using. So I will very quickly give you an introduction into what each of the 5 panels in the toolbar does. So firstly, on the left here, we have the Files tab. And this is where we upload and manage mining data. The next tab is the Models tab, and this is where we manage and define our resource, economic, and sensitivity models. The next panel is very simple reports. This is where we can view all the reports that Cirrus creates and manipulate them. The next tab is very exciting indeed. It's a visualization tab, and this is wonderful because I can actually visualize all the mining data that I have uploaded. So you can see we have some thumbnail previews here. We have a block model with a pit surface, and these are fully interactive, so I can actually zoom in and pan around this thumbnail preview. We have a topo surface here with some point data. We also have a couple of surface files. So we're doing like a pit surface comparison here. And also just a good old-fashioned view of a block model filtered. If I want to look at these in more detail, I can click on one of these thumbnails and actually view a bigger screen visualization of that as well. And I can even go full screen if I did want to. So what a cool way to visualize and manipulate your mining data. And of course, this works on your phone, on a tablet, or any device that you want to use. The final tab is the Users tab. And the Users tab is where I can invite users into the project and collaborate with users. And we'll go back into a little more detail on that very shortly. So overall, I like to describe the Cirrus interface as very intuitive, collaborative, and scalable. It's intuitive because it's very quick and easy to navigate to the data that you want to see. It's collaborative because everything you do in Cirrus is easily shareable with colleagues or external customers. So if I go back to the Users tab here, this is a list of every user that currently has access to this project. And I can go in here and I can edit permissions of a user. So I can lock them down from editing, or I can give them admin rights if I want to. And if I want to invite someone into this project, there's an Invite New button on the top left-hand side. I just click that, enter someone's email address, set the level of admin rights that I want to give them, click on Invite. That person's going to receive an email inviting them to collaborate on a project. They just need to accept and create an account, and then they can view all that data with you, and so that you can work on all this data that's available in Cirrus in real time. So it's a really powerful tool to collaborate and share data in your organization. The final thing is that Cirrus is scalable, and that's a really important and fundamental thing of what we're doing here. So everything you do in Cirrus uses the power of Microsoft's cloud technology, so we can process mining data and make calculations much, much quicker than ever before. And it also means that your data is much more secure, it's backed up, and it's fast as well.
Thank you, David. That's great. Thank you for sort of taking us through that. My next question would be is, what about importing data into the Cirrus application? How does that work?
Yep. So as I briefly mentioned, Avesh, you do that in the Files tab. So the Files tab is really where we upload and manage all our data. There's an option here on the top left-hand side to upload a file, and I'll show you how that works. The key thing to mention here is you're not restricted by data that you upload. So you can upload any file type. It could be drill hole data, surface data, anything you want to upload and manage in the cloud, basically. So if I just grab some CSV files, for example, and click open, those files are now uploaded into the cloud. If I grab something, maybe a slightly larger file, what you actually see as well is you get a progress bar, so that when a file is uploading, you're able to see the progress that is being made, which is very useful. So this is a really powerful part of Cirrus, just the ability to be able to upload files and then share them. So you've uploaded your files, and then you can invite someone into the project to collaborate with, and then they can access that information.
That's great. Thanks again, David. Now, I guess once you've got the data uploaded into the system, in terms of configuring grades and the economic parameters for the sensitivity analysis, how do you go about doing that next stage?
Yep, so that's the important next step. So we have a block model that's been uploaded into this project. It's this file here. Once we have a block model uploaded, we can start configuring our grades and economics. And we do that in the models tab. So if we head across to the models tab here, I'm just going to delete these two models because we don't need them for now. Just give me 1 second. So there's an option here that says create from, and under there's an option for resource config, economic config, and sensitivity config. So one of the things we really considered when we designed Cirrus is that in existing mining software packages, it's very difficult and time consuming to define grades and economics against the block model, especially if you have lots, if you want to run lots of different scenarios in a short amount of time. So we designed a method so that you can run multiple resource economic and economic scenarios simultaneously. So if I just look at one of these options here, we could start with the resource config. So this is where I set up different resource model configs. I already have 2 that I can show you, but you can create new configs here, and we can have as many configs as we want. So if I just click on the resource config, the first thing you do is you select the block model that you're working on. And then what I can do is I can define my grade information. So I'm reading information directly from the block model now and adding labels. I can define my materials, my resource classification, and my logic that will be used for when we report on this. So that's how the resource config looks. I'll just show you what the economic config looks like. So as we look at the economic configurations, let's remember that the end goal of this is to work out how sensitive the reserves are regarding individual variables. So for the economic report, again, this time you select your resource model. For the economic model, for your different variables, you can have these for prices, for mining recovery, for dilution, for processing methods, materials, routing, and you can define your costs and grade processing here as well. So the common practice in mining when doing any kind of economic or sensitivity analysis is to change one variable at a time. So for example, you might want to come back and change the copper price, for example, and see the impact of change in your total reserves. So in Cirrus, we're making that very straightforward by giving you the flexibility to have as many of these configurations as you want, running them against a model and generating reports. So once you've generated those configurations, Cirrus will automatically create a resource and economic report. We can very quickly take a look and see what a report looks like now. So if I just open a resource report, for example, this might be the first time that you've seen a report in Cirrus, so I'll very quickly explain how it works. The graph is completely interactive, so we have a graph at the top and a pivot table at the bottom. Anything I change in the report, so if I drag and drop something in the pivot table, the graph at the top will automatically update, so it's up to date with the information in the pivot table. So I can fully customize this pivot table so it shows exactly the data that I want to show. I get a field chooser. So for example, if I wanted to turn an item off, or if I wanted to display resource class or something like that, I can come in the field chooser and choose exactly the fields that I want to display. And I have full export options as well, so I can export to an image, a PDF, a CSV file, or I can print the file directly to a printer as well.
Okay, David, that looks great. So how does one run the sensitivity analysis?
Yep, so this is a really exciting and the sort of breakthrough moment is that in Cirrus, we can use our economic model that we've created to conduct n-dimensional sensitivity analysis. So let's actually show you an example of how we set this up, and we'll do a live run now so you can see how quickly we can manipulate data. So let's take a look at our sensitivity configuration. So again, we go to the create from in models and select the sensitivity config. And here I can see some sensitivity model configs that I've set up previously. So let's just go in and take a look at one, and let's actually run it now so you can see how it works. So for our sensitivity model config, the first thing you have to do is select your reserves model that you want to work on. And then at the bottom here, and this is really where the magic starts to happen, is I can select variables from the block model. So in this case, we've selected a copper variable, a gold price variable, and a processing cost. So for the example with copper, the base value is $2 because that's read from the economic model. But we want to do an analysis of how it's going to affect our total reserves if we have a minimum of $1.5, and a maximum of $2.5, running it in increments of 0.5, so 3 scenarios in total. You can adjust the min and max here. So if you want to do more scenarios, you can just add it here. So if I wanted to do, I could do 100 scenarios in one go. The reason we can't do that now is because it takes quite a bit longer and we don't have time in a demo. So for now, we're just going to do 27 scenarios in total. But the really powerful thing here and the important thing to remember is you're completely unlimited in terms of how many variables you want to analyze in one go. So I just go to this pick list and I can select any item from my economic model, and I can set my increment, my base value, my min and maxes. So as I said, we could run 2,000 scenarios in one go if we wanted to, and that's the real power of Cirrus. So let's actually just go ahead and run it. So if I just go back to my project and go back to my sensitivity config, and let's just generate that sensitivity model now. And you'll have to bear with us a bit here because what's happening now is that we are starting to run reports on this, and it's using Microsoft servers to do that. So it's going to take a couple of minutes. So at this point, I'm going to hand back over to Avesh for any updates with questions.
Yeah, thanks, David. And I think whilst that's running in the background, let's perhaps pause for a moment. I just want to remind everybody who's attending today's webinar that we're happy for you to pose questions to us. So please do that. There should be a panel within your within the browser there that you can actually pose those questions, and we'll gather all of those and have a look at them at the end of the session. And I would just reiterate as well, if we don't get round to answering everybody's questions today, we'll certainly follow up. We can either arrange a follow-up call or we can send you an email. But as I say, really looking forward to getting your feedback and comments and any questions. So
at this point, Avesh, we're already up to 11%. So we've 17% now. So it's starting to wear away. The important thing to mention here actually as well is that this is completely scalable. So at the moment we've got a dozen or so of Microsoft servers working on this. But if you were working with a really large data set, if you had like a 4 GB block model or something like that, we can unleash more server power onto it as well. So you're sort of not restricted by how fast and how much data you can analyze.
Well, that's really good to know, and I guess for many minds, they're going to have multiple operations and multiple models and so on, and I guess as well using the power of the Microsoft cloud and using that scalability is going to come into its own really. And I suppose the other great benefit that you've already highlighted here, David, is that doesn't matter where you are, you could be sitting at the airport with your laptop or a phone, and you could be doing what-if scenarios, or you could just change one variable, one parameter, and see what the results are there and then. And then from there, you could share that with your colleagues on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
So how are we getting on now with the processing on this particular run now?
This is so exciting. We're up to 50% now. So we were fingers crossed that this was going to run quick enough to show in a demo. So I think we're okay at the moment. So what Cirrus is going to do when it gets to 100% is it's automatically going to create 6 new reports that we can use to analyze the results. So that's the sort of end goal of this, is to generate a report with all the raw data and also some really nice interactive graphs that we'll show you in a second.
And
can I say something?
Oh, please go ahead, Giorgio.
Yeah, because I think it's important to note that we are talking about in this example a copper and gold deposit. You have a lot of variables there to examine: oxides, sulfides for copper, for gold, different processing methods, and so on. So the block model ends up with a number of variables, and because of the restrictions of power, computer power, and time, we end up always examining just a few of them. What is amazing about Cirrus is that gives the mining people the opportunity to examine all the variables they want, whatever they are in their block model. Okay, so that makes it possible to examine different scenarios all at the same time. And one thing that is important also, I think, that I was making a note, is that we tend to see that as a important tool for reserves evaluation, but that's not necessarily true, because many times we do preliminary economic analysis reports, okay, in which you want to evaluate the potential of a deposit. And Cirrus can be a fantastic tool to get immediate results, examining all the variables that are in the block model.
Yeah, that's great input there, Giorgio. So the analysis completed. So if we just go back to our original sensitivity config, that was 27 scenarios in total, and that took about 2 to 3 minutes to run. So you can imagine it's going to take a bit longer if you're doing more scenarios, a lot more scenarios than that. But it just shows, even if you had like a 2 to 3 gigabyte model with an incredible amount of data, you would still be able to do some pretty thorough and comprehensive analysis in like 30 minutes to an hour, which is sort of a breakthrough in terms of what you can do now. So the next thing I wanted to show you, you can see now that what it's done is it's completed the run and it's created 6 new reports automatically. So let's just go ahead and show you what those reports look like. The first report it will create is a sensitivity economic report. So I will just show you what that looks like very quickly. Sorry, I think I just grabbed the wrong one, so let me just go back. So the first one I'm going to show you is the sensitivity economic report. So this is essentially all the raw data from the DSA run, and a lot of people would use this for a sort of validation of their results. So remember that I ran 27 scenarios when I did the sensitivity analysis. So this is a really good and interesting way to compare your results and view information side by side. So you can see here we've got a list of all the 27 scenarios, and here we could see the tonnages, the net revenue, and the copper and gold values and processing methods for that run. So this is a really good way of just looking at the raw data, doing calculations, doing validation, and make sure everything adds up. The next report I wanted to show you is the sensitivity economic report. Now this is very similar to our to the previous reports I showed you, but the difference is that instead of just seeing the base case, I can actually see all the 27 cases in a list at the top, and then I can select which scenario I want to analyze in more detail, click that from the pick list, and the report will update. So a really cool way to get a more comprehensive breakdown of each of your scenarios and view more data. Again, by the way, just like the resource and economic reports, these pivot tables and graphs are completely customizable in order to get the correct data that you want to see. So it starts to get a little more exciting now. The next thing that I want to show you is the tornado graph that Cirrus will create. So this is what a tornado graph will look like. Again, we have a pick list, so we can select which variable that we want to analyze. In this case, it's tonnage. So we have the best case value represented by the black vertical line going through the middle of the graph. And then the blue bins indicate the impact of change. So for copper at the top, we're seeing how sensitive the ore tonnage is as we change the copper price from 1.5 to 2.5, which is what we set up in our sensitivity analysis run. And that's the same for the processing cost and gold price as well. The next graph I want to show you is the spider graph that Cirrus will create. So it's the same sort of information being showed as the previous graph, but here we can actually view the data in increments, which is very cool. So again, completely interactive, this graph. If I hover over the lines, I can see the increments and all the values associated with the data. So for example, the blue line here is the copper price. So what this graph is showing is that if I just hover over here, if I increase my copper price by 25%, then that means I'm going to have a change of from 78.5 million tons to 79.5 million tons. And again, we can select any variable to do this analysis on. So if I select a copper average here, for example, then the spider graph will update and I'll get the different values. The other thing to mention here is the slope of the line is very important. So the slope of the line is showing the impact of the output variable. So perhaps if we just look at this gold line, the gold price is, the line here is very flat. So that's saying that the gold price is pretty much flat. It means if you pick the base case, there's going to be a very small variation if I drop the gold price, whereas the copper price is a bit different here. The next graph I wanted to show you is a cumulative distribution report. So if I click on that guy here and just open that up, so this shows the distribution of all my 27 cases in one graph. So what you have to do is give it a number of bins. In this case, I have 10 bins. And I can see exactly how many runs I have in each bin. So each bin is accumulated until we get to 100%. And the line that runs up here, this is just a reference line, and it's a representation of the distribution as a normal function. And the very last report I wanted to show you is the sensitivity matrix report. And this is a really powerful qualitative analysis of risk. So what we can do here is we can compare two variables against another variable. So I'm going to select tonnage from the drop-down list here. And if I, for example, select copper price, but this time select perhaps my processing cost, then the table will update. So what I'm seeing here is in the middle column, I'm seeing my base case. So for example, if my copper price increases by 0.5, so to 2.5, and my processing cost drops from 0.48 to 0.28, then I can see exactly how it affects my tonnage. So I can see the value here and then make a decision based off that. So a very quick way to compare and contrast two variables in a report here.
That's great, Dave. Thank you for taking us through that. Those reports and graphs look very interactive and very easy to use. Now, so that's kind of pretty much the end of today's session, just before we get to the questions section. But before I do that, I just wanted to thank you, David, for taking us through the Cirrus application. It's been very interesting. And thanks again to Giorgio as well for contributing to today's webinar. And most of all, thank you to everybody who's taken the time to log in and listen to this discussion. Now, I would like to say also that we'd love for you to join our community, and please follow us on the social media websites. You can use Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and you know, please give us your feedback if you've got any questions or any suggestions. We really would love to hear from you. Now, I'm actually just going to go through some of the questions here. A few of them actually come up several times, and apologies if we don't get round to all the questions today. We shall follow up with you, and if you think of anything subsequently, again, please use social media to get in touch. Now, oh, and also I should say that if you are interested in signing up to use the application, you can contact us at cirrusmind.com. So just going to the first question here, I guess I'm going to pose this to you, David. It is, can the Cirrus application work with data from other mining software?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think Giorgio could maybe answer the last bit of this as well. But yeah, it does. The main sort of data that we take is obviously the block model. At the moment, the best way to get a block model in is in a CSV file. So it's usually relatively simple to dump out a model from any of the existing mining software packages as CSV. So that's probably the best way to get a block model into Cirrus. One thing that we've sort of been talking about, and one thing that we think is really important for the future, is that at Cirrus we really want to promote open standards. We really feel that one of the problems that the mining industry has traditionally had is that it's very difficult to import and export data between different software packages, and I know firsthand how frustrating that can be sometimes. So what we really want to do is we want to adhere to open standards. We want to work with other mining software companies to make it easier for people to import and export data. But yeah, in terms of getting data into Cirrus, at the moment, we can accept all the kinds of solid and surface data, and block models come in via CSV. What we do have as well is a support team that can be available to help you import a model as well, if you need some help.
Great. I'm going to pick another question, which I think follows very neatly on from the previous one. And somebody's posed a question here. You work with particularly large block models, and I think you might have touched on this, and they're saying they've got their model is 2 gigabytes in size. How would Cirrus handle that?
Yeah, I think we did touch upon this in the presentation, but it's a really, really good question. At the moment, we've done a lot of testing, and we're still sort of in the early days of Cirrus, so we're starting to really find out the full capabilities of it now. But the important thing is that there's no reason to suggest we wouldn't be able to work with very large and complicated models. There's actually no restrictions in terms of processing and computing power that we have now that we're using Microsoft servers. So you saw today how we were able to do a sensitivity analysis of a reasonable size model very quickly in minutes. So there's no reason to suggest that if you had a 2, 3, 4 gigabyte model that we couldn't be doing similar sort of sensitivity analysis in, you know, half an hour to an hour. It's all just a case of getting the data and testing it, to be honest. Half an hour to an hour sounds like a long time, but when you compare that to how long that sort of analysis would take using existing software packages, like, that's incredibly fast, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Sorry, I think Giorgio was going to add something there. Sorry, go ahead, Giorgio.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to say that we've been doing some tests, trying different, methods to export and handle data. And nowadays we can do, we can do some of the graphs that have been shown today. We can do it, but we need to, evaluate the model in the mining software. Then from the mining package, we have to export it to Excel, and we have to set it up in Excel, do the graphs in Excel, and then you realize you missed some variables, you go back all the way and back and forth, okay? What's beautiful about the test that we are running here is that it is one-stop shop. You load the model, you do everything else in the same platform, you get results very quickly and covering all the scenarios and all the variables you want. We tried fairly large models, particularly from Micromine to Cirrus Mine with extreme ease and very quickly. We had no problems whatsoever.
Okay, thanks, Giorgio. Thanks, David, for answering that question. The next question is about, I think I'll have a go answering this one myself, is how is the product license and how much does it cost? Well, the thing about the Cirrus application is it's basically a subscription-based pricing model, which is similar to other cloud-based applications and quite dissimilar from what most people are used to, which is usually a perpetual license with an upfront cost for the software plus a support and maintenance cost. We've done away with that. We've made the pricing extremely attractive based on how many subscribers you have within your organization, and you can pay for it on an annual basis or on a biannual basis, and the subscription cost covers you for everything. So that includes support. It also includes updates which get pushed out from the product development team periodically, and it does away completely with having to download software or find CDs or work with dongles or any of that all sort of antiquated approach to software. But happy to discuss pricing with anybody that wants to get signed up with us after this call. The next question I'm going to pose back to David, if I may, is how much training would I need to use the application?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. And one thing at Cirrus we really pride ourselves on is that we think that people shouldn't need too much training to be able to use the software. We really want it to make it easy to use. So actually, there's no formal training available at the moment. You can actually make use of the software just either by learning it yourself with the help of support. We do have training resources available as well. So if I just go back into Cirrus here, if you can see my screen, we have a series of training videos. So for every feature that's available in Cirrus, so for example, uploading mining data or collaborating on project data, there's a very short 2 to 3 minute video explaining how to use that tool. So for example, if I wanted to know how to upload data, I can watch this very short video with basic steps on how to do that. So that's probably the easiest way to learn how to use the software, is just follow the help videos.
Great. Thanks, David. I'm conscious that we're running out of time. In fact, we've run into our 51st minute now on this session. So I think it's time we should wrap up. So I'd just like, again, thanks to everybody who's attended today's session. You'll get a copy of the slides shortly afterwards. Thanks to...
Yeah, just so everyone knows, sorry to interrupt, Avesh, we'll send out a recording of the webinar to all the attendees and all the people that didn't attend within 24 hours. So if you did miss something or you want to share a video, share the video with your colleagues or something, you can do that.
That's great. Thank you for that. So just really to wrap up, just wanted to say what we've shown you today is the world's first cloud-based application for doing rapid mineral reserves sensitivity analysis that you can use on any device. So that means your mobile phone, your tablet or your laptop, anywhere in the world, using the power of the cloud, where all your data is secure and it's scalable, and above all, the application is very easy to use. And once again, please follow us on social media, and we look forward to speaking to everybody again soon. Thanks to everyone and have a good day.